Oh, hello there. Yes, well, I could say Happy St George's Day, but it wouldn't be today. Wasn't yesterday either. Yes, all wonderful people in the British media insist on how Christian they are, but decided to completely ignore the fact that the church has decided that actually, because of Easter, then St George's Day is next week instead. Still, that's not going to stop them, is it? How dare the established church of which they profess to be part of isn't going to tell them what to do? We're not papists, etc. Anyway, yes, there were the usual sort of disappointing things in the media because we don't have any modern tradition of celebrating St George's Day. It's an excuse for real ale enthusiasts to annoy us with Morris dancing, and that's about as far as it goes. Of course, we get the inevitable plastic patriots in their plastic costumes pretending to be crusaders because, nobody really knows. It just doesn't quite work, does it? It's all a bit tacky and useless. Still, that won't stop the plastic patriots. I'll give you Exhibit A. For example, we had Rupert Lowe. We need the Great Repeal Act, followed by a national restoration, with total power being returned to Parliament. Yes, I couldn't see any problems with there being no checks and balances, Rupert. No, of course not. Look at every law, and unless there's a reason for it, repeal it. Oh, okay then, yeah, because we can see how well that's working in America with planes falling out of the sky, metaphorically or otherwise. Yes, anyway, yes, he did have to wish us all a happy St George's Day, and yes, lurking in the background, of course, there was Robert Jenrick, because that was the kind of big non-story of the day, was Robert Jenrick basically saying that, he's going to lead the Conservative Party, yes, after the muddle which didn't allow a runoff between him and James Cleverly, because somebody didn't put the papers in time. Still. Oh, the level of competence. Anyway, yeah, he's decided that he's going to take over. I think somebody should tell Kemi. I know her time was always going to be limited, but it's a bit in your face, that one. Still, for some reason, they just don't want to talk about that. Don't know why. Yes, so anyway, I wanted to just highlight though this particular long thread on Twitter, which made me smile, from Sam Bidwell, who works at the Adam Smith Institute. And if ever there's something which is incredibly false in terms of remembering a particular tradition in the UK, it must be the Adam Smith Institute. But he decided to put this together. Happy St George's Day. England is a special place. Great food, great art, great music, great people. Well, yes, probably, yes. But culture isn't about what people eat and wear. It's about norms, habits and methods of social organisation. So he's got a thread, yes, on the systems and norms that make England unique. And he manages to stumble a great deal in this. But I just want to highlight some of the things that he's decided to put up, which are dubious, shall we say, at best, or certainly being very, very selective in terms of what he decides is English. He talks about, for example, migration, all right, okay, which obviously is just one of those things that kind of stopped suddenly when we were all here, apart from a very limited number of Normans, and that was it, apparently, or something. Anyway, despite this remarkable internal flexibility, England saw relatively small numbers of migrants from outside the British Isles. Yeah, outside the British Isles, but enormously large number of migrants from inside the British Isles, who aren't necessarily English as such. Yes, I mean, we've been invaded many, many times by the Scots. They almost make a habit of it. The Welsh just drift across the borders because you can't trust Offa's Dyke to keep any of them out. And of course the Irish, who just basically, came here and built everything, a bit like the Poles did in the 80s, except with the Irish it was the canals and the railways, plus an enormously large number of children. Of course, because after all, they're cheap as well, aren't they? Yes. Insulated from Europe by the English Channel, populations movements were limited post-1066. They really weren't, mate, okay? They really weren't. You need to read about the Glorious Revolution. It was more of a very much glorious invasion that didn't go as bloody as everyone was expecting, okay? Save for some 50,000 Huguenots in the 16th century, yes. Enormous population influx of foreigners that we didn't like, and there was a huge row at the time because them Huguenot bastards were coming here taking our jobs. Still, I'm sure that doesn't remind you of anything today, does it? But anyway, apparently they were just English people who happened to be not from England or something. Yes, very, very muddled view. It goes on about like lots of right wingers do about how the past was simply a slightly different version of today, because they do love the idea that people from 1450 were pretty much identical to you and I today in terms of everything that they believed. This so it led to inevitably English exceptionalism. Let's carry on. The individuated responsibility of nuclear families and the ownership of property birthed another of England's social norms, a relatively high level of individual responsibility and freedom. Slavery was forbidden in England from 1066 and slave trading banned in 1102. Well, sort of, kinda, but no, not really, because it means what if you mean slaves, yeah, okay, but we have a long history after centuries after that of basically having people that are in effect slaves. So yes, maybe, but don't let's kid ourselves that somehow slavery was abolished in England in the 11th century, because there were plenty of slaves around. Yeah, you might want to think back to more American things. It's a very, very picky view of, oh, well, they passed this law in 1302, which means ... Except it just doesn't, does it? And, that whole thing about us banning slavery in the 1830s, yes, it was during Victoria's reign, albeit at fairly early on. It wasn't really put into effect in a large chunks of the British Empire until the 1870s. Just, you need to read about these things rather than going on what people like Rupert Lowe and others might want you to believe. There has been no legally sanctioned torture in England since 1640. Well, that's really torturing the word legally sanctioned, I'm afraid. Austria banned torture in 1776. France would ban torture in 1778. Yes, you see how much more advanced we are than them. Many of the liberties that took root in Europe during the Enlightenment were already the norm in England before 1700. Possibly. Sort of. Kind of. Not really. No. Legally sanctioned torture. I will point Sam once again to extraordinary rendition, whereby the British government decided that various plots of land containing waterboarding and other equipment should be decided as a legal property of other countries where they're quite happy with torture, so we really don't mind it, which is again torturing the language somewhat. Or indeed, I will point him to the Troubles, those 30 years when the British government was involved quite heavily in, well, kidnapping people, torturing them and then murdering them. You might think of the IRA being gunned down in the streets of Gibraltar, which was, a form of torture in its own right, if you think about it. And I know Sam doesn't probably know anything about that, but I do, and I like to point these things out. A failure to understand these norms has been the cause of many of the problems we've faced over the last 50 years. Well, yeah, if you want to make up stuff, then that's your choice, Sam. But I think you need yourself to actually understand various norms, because the norms that I think are important are different to you, and I can trace back X, Y, and Z. It's just that I think mine's actually based on, well, some more extensive reading than yours is. In many respects, home ownership, law and order, migration, we have failed to make our system work on its own terms, yes, because of people like you in the Adam Smith Institute who have decided that the economic system will strip away and destroy all of those things. So all of those ancient customs and rights that we've kind of thought might be, one of those things that are our birthright, like not being slaves or not being, subject to the whims of government, have been stripped away because, of course, it doesn't make as much money these days as in the past. Oh dear. Still, that's the Adam Smith Institute for you. They may have read Matt Adam Smith, but they don't care very much about it. It's time to rediscover our norms. Yes, a little England flag, I would wholeheartedly agree with you, but these are people that don't even basically understand, of course, that, St. George's Day wasn't yesterday. Still, what do I know, compared to Rupert or Robert Jenrick or indeed the Adam Smith Institute? Anyway, do have a glorious not St. George's Day. And remember, if you're going to make stuff up, do wrap yourself in a cheaply made bit of Chinese plastic and feel good about your country. Enjoy.